Hi, and welcome to The Lamp in the Library. I'm Graham.
I'm Kim.
And today we're going to be talking about books to help get you through the month of January.
Yeah, January can be a bit of a down month. The holidays are over and sometimes the weather isn't too nice. We're in lockdown, so it's definitely about staying in and staying safe. And these are some books that we thought helped us sort of banish those January blahs. Graham, what's your first selection?
So I think it can be important when you're trying to get through the month of January is to go back to a standby, a book that brings you joy, like a comfort read of sorts. So my comfort read is The Call of the Wild by Jack London. It's a classic. It is, of course, the story of a dog named Buck who goes from being a glorified lapdog to a wild beast. It takes place during the Yukon Gold Rush in the late 1800s. And it's a really good story, kind of a coming-of-age story, except for a dog. And I like that. I like a story from a dog's perspective. And anyway, it's really great. Buck comes into the fullness of his being, and it's just one of those stories that really resonates with me for whatever reason. And I like to return to it every few years, and I think that's important during January to get through that month.
Well, my first selection is a book I mentioned in the last video about books I was planning to read in 2021, and that is the book Ikigai, which is the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. I think this could make a really great January read for a couple reasons. One, it features a lot of the research and science that has recently been done on living healthy and happily into 100+ years. And while I was aware of a lot of the science that it shared, it's really good to be reminded of it because it does motivate you to not sit as much, to walk more, to watch what you intake into your body. But this book specifically also looks at this notion of Ikigai, which is sort of like your life's purpose. And why it could be a fun January read if you haven't read it already is it provides you something to meditate on and to think about for January. So while you're staying at home and sort of transitioning into this new year, you can think about, what is my life's purpose? What keeps me going and getting up every day?
Another thing that you might want to consider when choosing a book to get you through January is something that reminds you of the spring to come. The weather is often poor, it's dark. So my book that I'm currently reading right now, it's called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and it's a work of ecology, and it mixes the latest science on plant life. The author is a botanist, with traditional knowledge and indigenous folklore, and it's very readable. It's it's very personal, and it really reminds you of spring and the planting of seeds and the new life that comes up, and it really gets you in the mood and excited about planting seeds and growing plants. And one of the great things about this book is that it tries to highlight a positive relationship that humanity can have with the natural world, because a lot of the times we think, quite rightly, in light of an ecological crisis that we're currently going through, that humanity's relationship with nature is so negative that it can never be fixed, perhaps. But this book is trying to find the benefits that humans can have for the natural world. And, that's a difficult journey, that's a difficult sell, perhaps, but this book makes an excellent case for that. And I think it's a really inspiring work and well worth picking up this time of year.
Well, my next selection is very much in the same vein as Graham's, because I also agree that January can be a really great time for planning and dreaming of what's coming up. I think that one of the things that is sort of sad is that our culture doesn't support following the natural rhythms, and January is a time for sort of hibernating and staying in. And while that's very much encouraged this year, a lot of the time it's not. It's a very busy time, and while the ground sleeps, we can sort of dream of what we're going to put into it. So I chose Floret Farm's cut flower garden, and it's full of just like really beautiful photographs of different flowers you could put in your cut flower garden. It's broken up into seasons of what you want to do each season if you decide to have a cut flower garden. So it's perfect for starting to plan and think about the seeds that you want to purchase and start seedlings of and plant when the time is right for your zone. And yeah, I just think January can be a time of planning and dreaming, and this is a nice support of that.
My next choice is actually kind of in the opposite vein of my last one. It's kind of embracing winter. And I chose this book for a couple reasons. I have yet to read it. However, it has been sitting on my shelf for a long time, on my TBR shelf. It's called The Snow Queen by Joan de Vinge. And it is considered a science fiction classic. It won the Hugo Award about 35 years ago. And it is kind of based on a Hans Christian Andersen story, apparently. But yeah, with this book, I think I'm embracing winter and the cold, which is what January is all about. B, I'm delving into my TBR shelf. And C, I'm really taking my mind far away with a fantastical fantasy science fiction setting. And I think that's important. You need to escape the drudgery of January. So pick yourself up a book that's really going to take you to another realm.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this one.
That is a good idea because, as you mentioned, also January, February, they can be good times for sort of tackling that TBR. Maybe in a future video, we could even go through our shelves and show how large our TBR piles are. You can comment below if you'd like to see that, but they're kind of big. So my last selection is a book that I read a few years back, but I did actually read a huge chunk of it during January because I find that January is a good time where you can just like really hunker down and read more of those chunky books. Often they can be sitting on your TBR pile because you're just like, oh, I don't know if I have the time. And right now, because of lockdown, I actually think it's really good to have a chunky book as well because they can be harder to read because they're, hard to carry with us as we're going. But when you're just at home, you can pick up that chunky book. And mine that I'm sharing is Victor Hugo's Les Misérables. And this book I thought was a masterpiece. It became one of my favorite books that I've ever read, although I will, admit it's a long list, but still I think this book is beautiful. It takes, a lot of time to read it and to stay with it, and I adored the characters. Don't let yourself get too hung up on if you've seen the musical or movie version. There's so much in it that, they can't cover because it is a rather large book, and I've heard that, the original French is even many more pages than this.
French is a wordy language.
So while I highly, highly recommend Les Misérables as a book itself, you may even just want to look at your TBR pile and see what are those chunky books that are just sitting there that you can, really give your attention and time to during this, what can be a slower month.
Now is the time.
So thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hit the bell notification so you always know when we have a new video.
And let us know in the comments what your reads are to get you through the dark month of January. Keep well.
Keep reading.